No wolf walks out of the Bone Pass in winter, Kalen. Not one has in 100 years. Come down off this wall before the cold takes your hands too. Halden had said it gently, the way a man says a thing he has already said a dozen times and no longer believes will land. I did not answer him. I stood on the north wall of the Highreach with my bare palm flat against the cold iron of the pack horn I had not blown since the storm, and I looked at the mouth of the pass the way a man looks at a grave he cannot stop visiting. Then the pass answered him. It came thin and far and broken, a single howl threading down through the dark between the peaks, and it was not the wind, because I had spent 30 winters learning the difference between the wind and the voice of my own blood, and the wind has never once made my chest seize the way that sound did. Halden went still beside me. The 2 guards at the gate below went still. For the length of one breath, the whole of my mountain held itself as if it, too, had heard the dead speak. "That's a trick of the rocks," Halden said. But his voice had gone to a whisper, and a man does not whisper at a trick of the rocks. I did not whisper. I said, "Open the gate," and I was already moving. Let me tell you what I had lost, so you understand why a grown king went down his own wall 2 steps at a time with his heart in his throat like a boy. We of the Highreach are wolfkin. It is not a fancy, and it is not a story we tell to frighten the valley. Every soul born to my pack is born bound to a wolf. A second heart that runs the ridgelines while the first heart keeps the hall. A shadow of gray and silver that is as much you as your own hands are you. When my wolves ran, I ran. When I slept warmer for the weight of the pack breathing on the far side of the mountain. It is the oldest gift of my line and the truest, and for 1,000 years no alpha of the Stormcrown had ever had to learn what it was to be without it. I learned. 6 weeks before that howl, the great winter storm, the one the valley still calls the White Drowning, came down off the northern peaks with no more warning than a change in the smell of the air, and it caught the pack on the wrong side of the Bone Pass. They had gone through to the winter hunting grounds as they had every autumn since before my grandfather's grandfather. They had gone through laughing, if a wolf can laugh, and my own wolf had gone at the head of them, and I had stood on this same wall and watched the last silver tail vanish into the rocks and thought nothing of it at all. The storm sealed the pass in a single night. Snow to the height of 3 men, wind that stripped the skin from stone, and on the far side 40 of my wolfkin and no way through and no way back. We dug. Gods, how we dug. For 9 days every hand in the Highreach that could hold a shovel worked the near mouth of the pass, and the mountain buried our work each night faster than we could cut it by day, and on the 10th day the felt sense of the pack, that second heartbeat every one of us carried, began to go out. Not all at once. One by one, like lamps in a great hall being snuffed as the hour grows late. I felt my brother's wolf go. I felt old Marith's who had guided my father. I felt the young ones go, the ones barely a year bonded, and each time it was as if a hand reached into my chest and closed a door I had not known could be closed, and I stood in the dark behind it and could not open it again. And then, on the 11th night, I felt my own wolf go, and I will not tell you what that is like, because there are no words in the valley tongue or the high tongue for it, and I would not give them to you if there were. When it was done, I was alpha of a pack of men and women who had each lost the running half of their own souls. I was a king of amputees. I laid a cairn on the north wall, 1 gray stone for every wolf we had felt go out, and I counted them as I set them, and there were 40, and I did not weep because a king does not weep in front of 40 grieving houses, but I stood at that cairn every dusk after, and I put my hand on the cold horn, and I did not blow it, because there was no one left on the mountain to answer it. 6 weeks of that. 6 weeks of a hall gone quiet as a tomb, of hunters who flinched at their own shortened shadows, of the valley folk in Felgate whispering that the Highreach was finished, that the wolf kings were only men now, that a hard pack of raiders from the low country might come up the road in spring and find nothing left to stop them. That was the man who stood on the wall when the howl came. Understand him, and you will understand why he ran. I went through the gate and up the first switchback of the pass road, with Halden shouting my name behind me and my breath tearing out white in the moonlight. The snow was hard-crusted and screamed under my boots. The howl did not come again, and each step I took without it I told myself I had imagined it, that grief had at last cracked me the way Halden feared, that I was chasing a ghost up a mountain that had already taken everything I had to give it. And then at the third turn, where the road bends around a shoulder of black rock and the wind cuts sideways, something came out of the dark toward me, low and fast and staggering, and I stopped, and my whole body stopped, and I could not have moved if the mountain had come down on me. It was a wolf. It was thin past bearing, its ribs standing under a coat matted with ice, one ear torn and healed crooked, and it came down the last of the slope on legs that shook, and it came straight to me, and it put its great gaunt head against my chest, and it leaned there with all the little weight it had left, and it made a sound I felt more than heard, a low broken sound of a creature that has walked a very long way to a thing it was not sure still existed. I knew him. Of course I knew him. Torn left ear, healed crooked from a fight 3 summers gone. It was Ash, who had run at my own wolf's flank for 5 years, whose bond brother in the pack was a girl named Pell who had not spoken above a murmur since the 10th day of the storm. I went down on my knees in the snow, and I put my arms around a wolf. I had counted dead 6 weeks past, and I felt his heart going under my hands, quick and thin and alive, and something in me that had been frozen since the 11th night broke all at once, the way river ice breaks, not with a crack but with a great soft groaning shift of the whole weight of the thing at once. And I knelt there in the road, and I held him, and I was not a king at all. Kalen, Halden had caught me up. He stopped dead. I heard the shovel handle he'd snatched from the gate fall out of his hand. That's Kalen, that's Ash, that's Pell's Ash. He went out. I felt half of them go out myself. His voice cracked clean in two. How is he here? Ash lifted his head from my chest, and he turned it, and he looked back up the pass, back into the dark he had come out of, and then he looked at me, and then back up the pass. And any man who has ever kept a dog, let alone a wolf, let alone his own wolfkin, knows exactly what that is. It is come. It is follow. It is there is something up there, and you must see it. He wants us to go up, I said. Up the Bone Pass, in the dark, in winter. Yes. Halden looked at me a long moment. He had been my second for 11 years, and my father's before that, and he had told me 100 times that no wolf walks out of that pass in winter, and there was a wolf leaning on my knees who had just made a liar of everything he knew. He bent, and he picked his shovel handle back up out of the snow, and he said, "Then I'm going up with you. Someone has to carry you down when the cold's finished with your good sense." We went up. Ash led us. He could barely walk, and still he led us, and twice I carried him over the worst of the ice, and each time he squirmed to be set down again so he could go on ahead, checking always over his shoulder that we followed. The pass climbed and narrowed, and the walls rose black on either side until the strip of stars overhead was no wider than a river, and the wind funneled down it like something poured, and I stopped feeling my face somewhere past the second hour and did not much care. We climbed until the road gave out under a fall of storm snow and became a scramble, and Ash turned off the road entirely. Up a goat track I would have sworn no man could find in daylight, let alone under a half-moon, and it was there, cresting that track onto a shelf of flat rock tucked under an overhang out of the wind, that I saw the fire. A small fire, a careful fire, banked low and sheltered, the kind of fire built by someone who has spent a great deal of her life keeping small fires alive in high places, where a large one would be seen for 40 miles, and a careless one would kill her. And around that fire, in the red light of it, sleeping in a heap of gray and silver against the rock and against each other, and against the legs of the woman who tended the fire, were my wolves. Not one, not two. I counted, and I could not make my eyes hold the number, and I counted again. 9. 9 of my wolfkin, thin as ash, was thin, torn and frostbitten and alive, sleeping the sleep of creatures who have been afraid for a very long time and are, for the first time in a very long time, not afraid. And the woman. She had risen when Ash crested the shelf. She stood with the fire behind her so I could not see her face at first, only that she was small, smaller than any of the wolves lying against her, wrapped in layered wool and oiled leather, and a long pale scarf wound to the eyes, with a coil of rope over one shoulder and a short axe at her belt, and a way of standing very still and very balanced, weight low, that told me before I saw anything else of her that she had lived her whole life on ground that would kill you if you stood on it carelessly. She did not reach for the axe. She looked at me, and she looked at Halden, and she looked at Ash going to her and leaning on her leg the way he had leaned on my chest, and then she looked back at me, and she reached up and unwound the scarf from her face, and she said, in a voice roughened by wind and cold and days of talking to no one but animals, "You'll be the one they've been trying to get back to." I could not speak. I am not ashamed to tell you it. The Alpha King of the Stormcrown, who had faced the raiders of the Low Country across a shield wall and never once felt his throat close, stood on a shelf of rock in the dark and could not make a single word come. She saw it. Something in her face gentled. I could see her face now in the firelight, and I will only tell you for now that it was not a beautiful face the way the valley reckons beauty, all softness and stillness. It was a weathered face, wind burned across the cheeks, with a scar through one eyebrow and pale eyes set deep and quick, the face of a woman who has looked at hard country her whole life and not looked away, and it gentled, and she said, more quietly, "Sit down before you fall down, both of you. There's water hot. They won't hurt you." A small dry twist of her mouth. Though I'd not have said that about this lot when they first came to me. Took the first one 3 days to let me near enough to pull the ice out of his coat. Halden found his voice before I found mine. "How?" He stopped. Started again. "Woman, these are Highreach wolfkin. They went into this pass 6 weeks ago and the storm sealed it and we felt them die. Every one of us felt them go out of us like." He made a helpless motion at his own chest. "How are they here? How are you here?" She crouched back down by her fire and set a battered tin over the coals to heat, and she answered him without any drama at all, the way a woman answers a question about the weather. "They didn't die. They near did. Half of them are frostbit and all of them are starved, and 2 of them I've been feeding by hand because they hadn't the strength to chew." She jerked her chin up the mountain, past the overhang, into the dark. When the white drowning came down, the pass filled behind them, but it didn't fill in front of them. It fell in behind and drove them the wrong way, up into the high cirques where there's no getting down that a man knows of. They've been up there 6 weeks living off what a starving wolf lives off in winter, which is not much and not for long. They'd have been dead in another week, the last of them. She stirred the tin. "I found the first one caught in the ice below the Ravensmith. Been finding them since. Bringing them down to here, 1 and 2 at a time, because this shelf's the only ground between the high cirques and the pass road that the wind doesn't scour bare. Feeding them up, waiting on the weakest to be strong enough to move." She looked up at me then, direct, pale eyes to mine across the little fire. "I knew they belonged to someone. Wolfkin don't come marked like these, but for a pack that's more than beasts. I meant to bring them down to the Highreach myself when they could walk it. I didn't reckon on one of them being strong enough to fetch you first." A glance at Ash, warm. "That one's got no more sense than a stone and twice the stubbornness. Went off down the pass tonight while I slept. I thought I'd lost him to the ice." I found my voice. It came out lower than I meant it to, and rougher. "You went up into the high cirques," I said, "in winter, after the white drowning, alone, to bring down another pack's wolves." She shrugged, one shoulder, the coil of rope shifting. "I go where the ground lets me, and I don't much go where it doesn't. The cirques let me mostly. I've been reading this mountain since before I could read letters." She said it plain, not boasting, the way another woman might say she could sew or bake. "Somebody has to know the ways up here. Folk get lost. Beasts get lost. I bring them back down when I can, a beat. It's what I'm for. It's what I'm for. I have thought about that sentence many times in the years since. I did not know, kneeling on that cold shelf, that I would spend the rest of my life learning how much she meant by it. "Who are you?" I asked. "Wren," she said. "The Pathfinder, they call me down in Felgate when they're being polite. The wild woman of the passes when they're not. Either does." She poured hot water into a second dented cup and held it out to me across the fire, and there was nothing in the gesture but plain Highland courtesy, a warm thing put into a cold man's hands. "And you, I'd guess, are the Alpha King everyone in the valley's been saying is finished." "Kaelin," I said and took the cup. Our hands did not touch. I noticed that they did not touch, and I noticed that I had noticed, and I did not yet understand why. "Kaelin of the Stormcrown, and the valley is wrong. The Highreach is not finished." She looked at the 9 wolves sleeping in the firelight, and at Ash leaning on her leg, and back at me, and something moved behind her pale eyes that I could not read. "No," she said softly. "I don't reckon it is." We did not sleep that night, or not much. There was too much to do and too little time to do it in. The Highland winter gives you a window between storms and slams it shut without warning, and Wren, watching the sky the way I have never seen anyone watch the sky, said we had perhaps 2 days before the next front came down off the North Peaks, and that after it the passes might not open again till the thaw. 9 wolves here on the shelf, and more still above. "How many more?" I asked her before the fire, while Halden slept the sleep of an exhausted man wrapped in Wren's spare blanket with a wolf pressed to either side of him. They had gone to him in the night, sensing kin, and he had woken with gray heads on his chest and wept without shame, and I had looked away to give him the grace of it. Wren was quiet a while. She had a way of being quiet that was not empty. You could see her counting, weighing, reading something in her own mind the way she read the mountain. "I've brought down 11, counting the 9 here and the 2 I've cached lower on the cache ledge with the last of my salt meat," she said at last. "There's more above. I've seen sign. Tracks in the high snow, scat, a kill they'd made of a winter hare. I'd put it at," she hesitated, and I understood she did not want to give me a number and take it back, did not want to hand a grieving man a hope she could not keep, "at 9 more. Maybe 10, scattered through the top cirques. Some of them I've not been able to reach. There's a couloir under the Stormcrown itself where I've heard them but not got to them. The ground won't let me alone. It's a 2-rope pitch and I've only the 1 pair of hands." She looked at me. "That's the reckoning, Kaelin. 11 down, 9 or 10 still up, and 2 days maybe before the weather closes it all. 20 of my 40, if her count held. 20 wolves I had felt die and buried under gray stones, alive up there in the killing dark, waiting. I did the arithmetic of grief, which is a cruel arithmetic. 20 found meant 20 truly lost. My own wolf among the 20 lost. I had felt him go on the 11th night, and I had felt nothing since, and I did not let myself hope, because a man can only survive that particular door being opened and shut in him so many times. 20 back was a miracle past anything my line had ever been given. I would not spit on the miracle by weeping for the other 20 at the feet of the woman who had wrought it. "Then we bring down the 20, I said, "all of them, before the weather closes." Wren looked at me a long moment. "2 of us," she said, "one who knows the ground and one who doesn't. 9 wolves here too weak to leave alone, and 9 or 10 more scattered across the worst top ground on the mountain, and a couloir I can't climb by myself." She was not arguing. She was, I came to learn, simply laying the ground out flat for me the way she laid it out for herself, so that a decision could be made on true footing and not on hope. "It can't be done by 2. "Then it will be done by more," I said. "Halden goes down at first light and brings up every hand in the Highreach who can climb and carry. We have ropes. We have men who have hunted this range their whole lives. What we don't have is your eyes and your feet and your knowing of the ground." I set down the cup. "Wren, I have felt 20 of my own die and I was wrong. I will not stand on a warm shelf and let the other 20 die because 2 hands weren't enough. Tell me what the ground will let us do, and where, and I will put 40 hands on it. Will you lead us?" She was quiet again, and this time I could not tell what she counted. "Folk hire me to guide them," she said slowly. "A fee, a guide's fee. I've never once led a whole pack of wolfkin lords up onto the death ground and asked them to trust a wild woman with their lives." A pause. "I don't know what to charge for that." "Charge what you like," I said. "It's yours." She shook her head once, and something in her closed and something else opened, and she looked at the sleeping wolves, at Ash, at the two she'd been feeding by hand, and she said, very low, almost to herself, "No, no fee. I never took a fee for the ones I brought down before you came. I'll not start now that the counts got so high." She looked up. "But I'll hold you to your 40 hands, Alpha King. Bring me hands and I'll bring you your dead back alive. That's the trade." "That's the trade," I said. And I want to mark here the thing I did not understand until much later. Sitting across a small fire from a wind-burned woman who would not take my gold, watching my 9 impossible wolves sleep against her legs, I felt for the first time since the 11th night of the storm warm. Not the fire's warmth. A warmth low in my own chest, in the hollow place where my wolf had been, a place that had been 6 weeks empty and cold as the cairn stones. It was faint. It was so faint I told myself it was the hot water, the relief, the fire. But it was there, and it had not been there an hour before I climbed onto that shelf and saw her face in the light, and I did not understand it, and I put it away from me, because I had a mountain to empty of my dead and no time to sit and wonder why a stranger's fire warmed a place no fire could reach. Halden went down at first light. I watched him go with 2 of the strongest wolves. Ash would not be parted from Ren, but 2 others, rested and fed a day, went down at Halden's heel to carry the word and to prove it, because Halden had said, right even then, that no one in the High Reach would believe him without a living wolf to show, and he was right. And then Ren and I turned and went up. I will not give you every hour of the 3 days that followed, though I remember every one. I will give you what matters. I learned that first day, going up into the high cirques with Ren, what it was to watch a master at a craft I had thought I understood and did not. I had hunted this range my whole life. I thought I knew mountains. I knew nothing. Ren read the snow the way a scholar reads a page. She would stop at a slope that looked to me exactly like the slope before it and say, "Not that one. The sun's been on it. It'll go and take us a longer way around." And an hour later we would hear, far off, the deep soft whump of that very slope releasing and pouring itself into the valley, and she would not even look up. She would only say "told you" under her breath and go on. She found tracks in wind-scoured ground where I saw nothing. She found a wolf, the 12th, wedged in a crevice under a snow bridge, too weak to howl, that we would have walked past within 10 feet and never known, because Ren stopped and tilted her head and said, "There's one near. I can smell the fear of it," and there was. And the wolves undid me over those 3 days more than the mountain did. My wolfkin do not go to strangers. It is not in them. A High-Reach wolf will die for its bond brother or bond sister, and will let no other living soul lay a hand on it. I have seen my own wolf take the finger off a man who reached for him uninvited. And yet, every wolf we found up there in the high dark, half dead, terrified, 6 weeks feral with fear, every single one of them, when Ren came to it, went quiet, went to her, leaned its ruined head against her the way Ash had leaned against my chest. Let her pull the ice from its coat and the thorns from its pads and feed it from her own hand, and looked at her. I saw it, again and again, and each time it went through me like cold water, looked at her the way a wolf looks at only one thing in all the world. The way a wolf looks at its own. On the second night, camped on the cache ledge with 14 wolves gathered now, and the first of Halden's men come up with ropes and salt meat and a great glad grim energy about them. I watched Ren move among the pack in the firelight, checking each one, and I watched the pack watch her, and I said, without meaning to say it aloud, "They know you." She looked up from the wolf she was tending. They know I feed them. No, I came and crouched by her. The wolf between us, it was Marith's old wolf, gray-muzzled, who had guided my father and would let no hand but my father's near him in life, pushed his head under Wren's palm and closed his eyes. No, that is not a wolf who knows he's being fed. I have watched wolfkin my whole life. That is a wolf who knows you. My voice had gone strange to my own ears. They went to you before you fed them. Ash came down the whole pass in the dark to fetch me to you. They knew you before you gave them a thing, Wren. How? She did not answer for a long time. She kept her hand on the old gray wolf's head, and she looked into the fire, and when she spoke it was not really an answer. When I was a girl, she said, before the passes, before Fellgate even, my mother's mother told me a thing, that there are folk the wild knows. Not folk who learn it, folk it knows, the way it knows the spring knows to melt and the birds know to come back. She said it skipped and it settled where it liked, and there was no earning it and no refusing it. She said I had it, a small breath, almost a laugh without much humor in it. I thought she was a mad old woman keeping a mad old girl company. Then I grew up and I found I could not get lost, Kaelin, not truly. Put me anywhere in these mountains, blind, turned round in a whiteout, and something in me knows the way down the way you know your own name. And the beasts, she stopped. The beasts have always come to me, always, lost dogs, hurt hawks. A bear once that should have killed me and instead walked me 9 miles down a valley I couldn't have found in the dark and left me at the edge of the tree line and went back up. She looked at me. I never told anyone that. They already call me the wild woman. I didn't need to hand them proof. I looked at her across the fire, at the old gray wolf asleep under her hand, my father's wolf, who I had felt die, alive and at peace beneath the palm of a woman he had never met until a week ago, and the warmth in my chest, the faint warmth I had felt on the first night and put away, came up in me again, and this time it was not faint. I want to be honest with you, because this is the truest part and I will not dress it up. I did not fall in love with Wren of the Passes in that moment because she was gentle to my wolves, though she was, or because she was brave past any measure, though she was, or because the firelight was kind to her weathered face, though it was. It was something older than any of that and under it, something I had no name for that night and have only one name for now. My whole life I had waited to feel the thing every alpha of my line is promised and few are given. The pull toward the one the old bond marks for you, the faded one, the mate. I had felt nothing, ever, in 30 years, and I had made my peace with feeling nothing, and I had told my counsel I would take no wife I did not choose with my own cold reason, because my blood had given me no one to choose. My blood had been waiting, that is what I understand now. It had been waiting for a wind-burned woman crouched in the snow with her hand on a dying wolf's head, and it had known her before I did, exactly the way my wolves had known her before I did, and the warmth in my chest was the oldest heart in me, the wolf heart, the one I thought the storm had taken, turning over in its long sleep and beginning, very slowly, to wake. I did not tell her, not then. There was a mountain to empty and a storm coming, and it was not the hour to lay a king's heart at the feet of a woman who had asked me for no fee and no favor. But I marked it, and I have never unmarked it since. The 3rd day was the hard one. By the 3rd dawn we had 18 down, 18 of my wolves gathered on the cache ledge and the shelf below it, fed and roped and ready to be brought the last way down to the high reach, with a dozen of Halden's men come up to carry the weakest. 18. And Wren, reading the sky at first light, her breath frost, her scarred brow drawn, said the front was closing faster than she'd hoped, that we had until dusk and no longer, and that after dusk the top of the mountain would be sealed till spring. And there were still 2 above, the 2 in the couloir under the storm crown, the 2-rope pitch she could not climb alone. I can hear them, she said. We stood at the foot of the couloir, a great chute of ice and black rock that went up into the cloud that was already beginning to boil down off the summit, the storm's forerunner. Somewhere far up it, thin and desperate, 2 voices rose and fell. There on a ledge maybe 200 feet up. They can't come down, the ice below them sheer. They'd have tried by now. And I can't fix 2 ropes and climb them both at once and carry 2 grown wolves down between them by myself. It's why I've left them last. I kept hoping the weather would give me a clear day and a second pair of hands. She looked at me, and for the first time in 3 days I saw something like defeat move across her face. The weather's not going to give us either. Kaelin, I don't know that these 2 can be done. Not before dusk, not without losing someone to the fall. I looked up the couloir into the closing cloud. 2 of my wolves were up there. I did not know which 2. I had not let myself hope over 3 days about the last of them, about the 20 I still counted lost, because I could not survive that door again. But 2 of them were up there, alive, calling. "Fix your ropes," I said. "You climb, I'll carry. You don't know the ground. You'll teach me, 200 feet. Tell me where to put my hands and I'll put them there." I met her eyes. "You said bring you 40 hands and you'd bring me my dead back alive. I brought you the hands. Don't stop counting now that the numbers got hard." She looked at me a long moment in the growing wind with the cloud coming down. And then, and I will remember this until I die, she almost smiled, that dry small twist of her mouth, and she said, "You're as bad as your wolf, no more sense than a stone." And she fixed her ropes. I will not pretend I was any use on that climb but a set of shoulders and a will that would not quit. Wren went up the couloir like something the mountain had made. I could not follow how she found the holds, only that she found them and set the ropes, and called down to me exactly where to put each hand and foot in a voice so steady and so certain that I did not have room to be afraid. The cloud came down over us. The wind rose to a scream in the throat of the chute. Ice came off the walls above and struck us, and we climbed through it. Twice I slipped, and twice the rope she had fixed held me, and once I felt her hand close on my wrist from above, small and iron strong, and haul with a strength that woman had no business having in a body that size, and I got my foot back under me and went on. And the warmth in my chest was a fire now, a low steady fire, and I climbed toward 2 calling wolves with a woman's hand on my wrist, and I thought, with a clarity that frightened me, if the mountain takes me now it can have me, only let it not take her. We reached the ledge as the first true snow of the front began to fall. 2 wolves, thin, frozen, past standing, but alive, and one of them, when it saw Wren come over the lip of the ledge, made a sound I will carry to my grave, a sound of a creature that has been calling into the dark for 6 weeks and has, at the last, been answered. And the other one lifted its head. The other one lifted its head, and it looked at me, and it had a white blaze across its chest in the shape of a broken crown, the mark of the Alpha's own wolf, the mark that no wolf in 100 generations of my line had worn but the one bound to the king. And the door in my chest that I had shut on the 11th night of the storm, the last and heaviest door, the one I had sworn I would never let be opened again, because it had nearly killed me to have it shut, that door came open, all at once, and light came through it, and my wolf looked at me across a frozen ledge 200 feet up a killing couloir, and I knew him, and he knew me, and the bond that I had felt die 6 weeks before came back into me like a river coming back to a dry bed. And I was whole, And I went down on my knees on the ledge and put my face in his frozen ruff, and I did weep then, king or no king, in front of the only other soul on that mountain, and I did not care. When I could see again, Wren was watching me. She had gone very still. She had understood, of course she had. She understood wolves better than she understood people. She had understood exactly what she was looking at. "That's yours," she said quietly over the wind. "That one, yours the way ashes pells." "Mine," I managed. She looked at my wolf, at the broken crown of white across his chest, and something crossed her face that I could not read, and she said, so low I barely caught it over the storm, "Then I've brought the king his own heart back down the mountain, a breath. I didn't know that's what I was doing when I climbed. We got them down. I will not tell you it was easy. It was the hardest hour of my life in Wren's craft, and my back and the ropes and the mercy of the mountain were all that stood between us and the fall. And twice I thought we were finished, and twice Wren found a way where there was no way. But we got the two wolves down the couloir as the front closed over the summit like a lid, and we came off the bottom of it into the arms of Haldon and his men, and the whole pack of them, 18 wolves and 12 men, closed around us out of the driving snow, and my wolf, weak as he was, lifted his head against my chest, and I put back my own head, and for the first time in 6 weeks I let the wolf voice up out of me, the true alpha's cry, and 18 throats answered it. And the mountain that had tried to swallow my whole pack rang with the sound of them. 20 of my wolves come down off the death ground alive, and at the head of them, small and wind-burned and swaying now with exhaustion, a woman who had asked me for no fee. We came down the Bone Pass in the last gray light before the storm sealed it, 20 wolves and 13 men, and Wren, and me, down the goat track and onto the pass road, and down the long switchbacks toward the lights of the Highreach, which someone had lit in every window against our coming, so that my hall stood out on its shoulder of the mountain like a lantern in all that dark. And I want you to see it the way I saw it, coming down. The whole pass road, from the high shelf to the north gate, one long dark line of wolves moving down out of the mountain that had held them, and at the head of that line, leading them, breaking trail for the weak ones through the drifts, one small pale figure with a coil of rope over her shoulder. 20 wolves, following a mountain guide down the pass. She meant to leave us at the gate. I did not understand it at first. We came through the north gate into the yard, into the light and the warmth and the astonished, weeping, roaring welcome of a whole pack that had buried these wolves in their own hearts 6 weeks gone and now had them back. And in all of it, in the chaos and the joy of it, I lost her for a moment, and then I saw her. At the gate, at the edge of the light, tightening the strap of her pack, turning to go back up into the storm. I crossed the yard. My wolf came with me. He would not leave my side, weak as he was, and I would not have let him, and I reached her at the gate as she settled her rope on her shoulder. "Where are you going?" I said. "Home." She nodded up the pass into the dark and the snow. "I've a shelter above Fellgate. The front's coming, but I can beat it to my own door if I go now." A small, tired, real smile, the most I'd seen from her in 3 days. "You've your wolves, Alpha King. You don't need the Pathfinder anymore." It was, she paused, and something honest and unguarded came up in her face. "It was good work. The best I've ever done. I'll not forget it." And she turned to go. And my wolf, the Alpha's wolf, with the broken crown across his chest, who 6 weeks past I had felt die, and had this very hour got back and would not for the world have let out of my sight, my wolf left my side. He went to her. Weak as he was, he crossed the last of the ground between us, and he stepped in front of her, between Wren and the gate, and he leaned his great blazed head against her legs the way every wolf on that mountain had leaned against her, and he looked up at her, and he would not move. Wren stopped. She looked down at him. "Oh, now," she said softly, "don't you start. You've a king to be getting back to." She made to step around him. He moved with her, blocking, insistent, the broken crown of white plane in the gate light. And then he did the thing that Ash had done at the very beginning, that first night on the road. He looked back over his shoulder at me, and then up at her, and then back at me. "Come, follow. This one. This one." The wolf outed me before I had the courage to out myself. He always did have more sense than I gave him credit for. More than a stone, whatever Wren says. I crossed the ground to her. The yard behind us had gone quiet, the whole pack, feeling it, the way my pack feels everything, had gone still and was watching. Wren stood at the gate with my wolf leaning on her legs and looked at me coming, and I saw her understand that something was happening that she did not have the reading of, she who could read everything, and I saw her almost step back from it. "Wren," I said, "don't go." "Kaelin." "My wolves knew you before I did," I said. "Every one of them went to you. Wolfkin don't go to strangers, Wren. It's not in them. They'd sooner die. And every single one of mine went to you like you were their own, and this one. I looked at my own wolf, the broken crown leaning against her, refusing to move. This one won't let you leave. Do you know what that means? Do you know what it means when the alpha's own wolf stands between his mate and the gate? She had gone very still. I'm not, she started and stopped, and I saw in her weathered face that she did know, or half knew, that the wild that knew her had been telling her something for 3 days that she had been too careful and too used to being alone to let herself hear. You said the wild knows you, I said. You said there was no earning it and no refusing it. Wren, I am Wolfkin, the oldest of the Wolfkin, and the wild that knows you is my wild. The bond that marks a mate for an alpha of my line marked you, and my wolves felt it before I could, because I'd shut the door on that part of me to survive losing them, and it's only these 3 days with you that it's come open again. I held out my hand to her, palm up in the gate light in the falling snow. I'm not asking for a fee either. I'm asking you not to go back up that mountain alone tonight or ever if you'd rather not. I'm asking you to stay, not because I'm a king. Because you're the one my blood has been waiting for the whole of my life, and I was too frozen to know it, and my wolf is wiser than I am, and won't let me be a fool about it a moment longer. She looked at my open hand, and I saw her weigh it, the way she weighed everything, the ground, the snow, the slope that would go. A woman who had lived her whole life alone in high places, who had been the wild woman of the passes, who had learned to want nothing she could not carry, being asked to lay down the coil of rope and stay in the warm. And then she reached out slow, and she laid her cold, scarred, iron-strong hand in mine. And the moment our palms touched, I have to tell you this carefully, because I have never been able to make anyone who was not there believe it. The mark of my line, the silver mate mark, the one that sleeps in the palm of every alpha of the Stormcrown and wakes, the old tales say, only at the touch of the faded one, the one no alpha in 4 generations had seen wake, because none of us had been given a faded one to wake it, the mark woke. It came up under our joined hands like frost blooms on a cold window, not fast but not slow either, a spreading of fine silver light that ran out from where our palms met in branching lines like rhyme, like the veins of a leaf, like the tracks of some bright thing across new snow, up across the back of my hand and across the back of hers at once, the same pattern, the 2 halves of one mark, and it did not burn, it was warm. It was the warmth I had felt in my chest the first night on the shelf made visible and made whole, and it lit the falling snow around us silver white, and the whole pack of the Highreach drew one breath. Wren looked down at the silver light spreading across the back of her own hand, at the mate mark of a line she'd never heard of blooming on her weathered skin, and then she looked up at me, and the careful, alone, unaskable thing in her face broke, and under it was something I had not seen there in 3 days, something young, and unguarded, and afraid to hope, the mirror of the thing that had broken in me on the road the first night when Ash leaned his gaunt head on my chest. I don't know how to stay, she said, very low only for me. I've been alone so long I don't know how to be anything else. I don't know how to be a, she couldn't say the word. A Luna, I said, neither of them do. I nodded at my wolves, my whole pack, gathered silverlit in the snow, watching. But they knew how to choose you before either of us knew anything at all. Learn the rest with me. There's no ground you can't read, Wren. You'll read this one too. She looked at the mark. She looked at the wolves, 20 of them, home, alive, watching her with the eyes Wolfkin turn on only their own. She looked at my wolf, the broken crown, still leaning on her legs, home at last, refusing still to let her go. And she looked at me. No fee, she said, and there was that dry twist of her mouth, but it was wet at the edges now. I keep telling you, I never took a fee for bringing the lost ones home. No, I said, you just kept the whole mountain from having anything left to lose. I closed my silver-marked hand around her silver-marked hand. Stay, Wren. Come in out of the snow. She came in out of the snow. I named her before the pack that same night in the great hall, with 20 impossible wolves asleep along the walls and 13 men who'd climbed the death ground grinning like boys and Halden weeping openly, and not caring who saw. I named her Luna of the Highreach, and Pathfinder of the Stormcrown, and I told the whole gathered pack the truth of what she'd done, that she had gone up alone into the killing dark after another pack's wolves and asked for nothing, and brought down 20 of our own that we had buried in our hearts, 1 and 2 and 3 at a time, over 6 weeks, on her own back, and led them the last way down the Bone Pass at the head of the whole pack with the storm at her heels. And the Highreach, who do not bow to strangers any more than our wolves go to them, went down on one knee to her in the firelight, every soul in the hall, and Wren stood there in her wind-burned wool with the silver mark on her hand and did not know where to look, and I saw her understand slowly that she was not the wild woman of the passes any more, and never would be again. That is nearly the whole of it. There is only one thing more, and it is a small thing, and it is the thing I treasure most, so I have kept it for the end. 2 winters later, on a still cold night with the pass safely sealed and every wolf of the Highreach warm and accounted for on the right side of the mountain, I woke in the dark, and Wren was not beside me. I found her on the north wall, where I had once stood every dusk with my hand on the horn I could not blow. She was standing at the old cairn, the 40 gray stones I had laid for the dead. 20 of them we had taken up, 1 for each wolf come home, in a small quiet ceremony the spring after she came, each stone carried down and set into the hearth wall of the hall where the living wolves slept. 20 remained on the north wall, for the 20 we never found, who I had let myself grieve at last, once I was whole enough to. Wren stood at the 20 stones in the starlight with her hand resting on the top one, and my wolf sat beside her, the broken crown pale in the dark, and her own, for she had a wolf now, of course she did, a great gray shadow that had come down out of the high country the spring after we wed and put its head under her hand and never left, because the wild that knew her had finished waiting too. Her own wolf sat at her other side. I came up beside her and put my arm around her and said nothing, because after 2 winters I had learned that Wren's silences were not empty and did not need filling. "I still go up," she said at last quietly into the dark. "You know I do. Folks still get lost. Beasts still get lost. Somebody has to know the ways." "I know," I said. I did know. I had stopped being afraid of it. She always came down. She could not truly get lost. She had told me so the second night on the mountain, and it had turned out to be the truest thing anyone ever told me. "When I go up now," she said, "I don't bring them all here." A pause. "The lost ones I find, the ones that aren't yours, I find their folk, I bring them to their own gates." She turned the top stone of the cairn a little under her hand, gently, an old woman's habit though she was not old, a tending gesture. I used to think that was just what I was for, bringing the lost home. She looked up at me, and in the starlight her weathered face was the whole of my heart. I know now it was practice. For the one time it mattered, for bringing you yours. I had no answer to that. I have never had an answer to that. I only pulled her in against my side, with our 2 wolves and the 20 gray stones and the sealed pass and the whole warm sleeping mountain below us, and we stood there together in the cold a long while, the Pathfinder and the king she'd found the way to, and neither of us was lost, and neither of us ever would be again.